Hello, everyone, and welcome to our panel session, The Future of TV Entertainment. My name is Guy Bisson, and I'm Executive Director of Ampere Analysis, and I'll be moderating the session today. Joining me on the panel to talk about trends in advertising and content is Neil Mortensen, who's Director of Audiences at ITV, where he is responsible for overseeing all research from ad effectiveness to program development. Also on the panel today, James Cornish, VP International Sales for music video platform Vivo, and Stefan Korabul, the MD of RTL Ad Connect, which is the international ad sales house for multi-channel group RTL. So I said we're going to be talking about both advertising and content trends. So I want to kick off really focusing in on some of the content and what's going on out there. Obviously, SVOD, the paid SVOD market, is heavily driven by high-end drama, but they're beginning to move into some of the more entertainment and reality-focused formats. From a broadcaster perspective, Neil, can you tell us what's going on out there with the broadcast commissioning, some of the consumer demands that you're seeing, and where commercial broadcasters sit in terms of their content strategy today?
Well, firstly, hello, everybody. It's great to be here. Yeah, it's great to start off with such a big question. I can certainly talk about, we're talking about the entertainment space in particular. It is a huge question because obviously entertainment for us is a really broad church, from shiny floor shows to quizzes and strict reality. So there's a whole lot of different issues going on at the moment and different needs going forward. I'd say that actually when you talk to our commissioning teams, our entertainment commissioning teams, in the aftermath of COVID, I guess in the immediate aftermath, we had a huge amount of ideas, a flood of ideas from production companies that were kind of really evolving quite a bit around lockdown itself. So the shows were, had that entwined into the idea. And of course, they were obviously shows that could actually be made in lockdown as well. And, we had some fantastic ideas. Audiences have told us that they have appreciated the efforts that have been made right across the board with shows that have been made in lockdown, and shows like Ant and Dec Saturday Night Takeaway have been, hugely appreciated by the audience. But I don't think, from our perspective, certainly from ITV's perspective, we don't want every show to have that component to it. People want to escape, they want to be entertained. And I think that people don't want to be reminded every single day of the situation they're in. For some people, it's quite difficult, as we know. I think you've got to give people credit for trying. Things like Graham Norton and Have I Got News for You have made fantastic attempts to delivering those sort of shows. I'm not sure whether they've worked that well, but there's been fantastic attempts. So I think for us, we're now into kind of mid and long-term planning on new shows, and I don't really want to simplify this too much, but there isn't really ever big, identifiable trends when it comes to entertainment formats, or ideas. Really, for us, it's about trying to find the right ingredients for an entertainment show, and then and I mean any entertainment show. Again, from a quiz or from a strict reality, and those ingredients are really quite simple, but obviously very difficult to attain. So things that are familiar and original at the same time, things that have humour, things that are engaging, have jeopardy. They're really compelling. Hopefully formats that are driven by big talent, and really importantly, multi-generational. So at the moment for us, we're in that form. We're not looking for shows that are specifically generated around lockdown. We're looking for kind of that more mid-long-term planning, and essentially is still open for business.
Stefan, I know that RTL, some of the RTL shows are also still getting made despite lockdown. What sort of trends are you seeing out there, and how are you adapting?
So first of all, maybe just a little bit of a step back in saying, and I guess, along the day of the future of TV webinars today, we talked about the resilience of TV and linear TV in particular, especially in this moment. So what we see, and we see everywhere in Europe, is basically a huge increase in viewing time. It's the case in the UK. I'm sure Neil can confirm. I have a few statistics, plus 15% at the early stage of April. At the same period of time, it was about between 15 and I would say up to 40% in daily viewing time in some countries, such as Italy. It was plus 19% in Germany, etc. So we see this huge trend in coming back, I would say, through traditional media, especially TV, in order to get informed, to be entertained, and to be educated. The second trend was really about also the non-linear platforms, just such as ITV Hub, plus 15% as well, and the same week, early April in terms of viewing, but also the case everywhere across Europe on our platforms, M6, Sisplay in France, or TV Now in Germany. So back to, I would say, some kind of a resilience of the TV business, either linear or non-linear. When it comes to content, so definitely we have had to adapt to the lockdown situation. Yes, we are keeping on, producing some shows like Berlin Tag und Nacht in Germany, but of course we had to adapt also to the situation. And put some, I would say, lockdown ingredients into the schedule. For instance, in the M6 in France, we have a daily, I would say, pre-prime time show called Tous en Cuisine, everyone in the kitchen. So basically, we have a big chef, a big talented chef at home, as his own home, and cooking with everyone else with webcams and people invited during the show. It's every day, and it's very successful in France. If I take Belgium as another example, Belgians, they've been always very locally focused, close to the people, and basically they are recording Belgians at their home, and doing some funny things and funny webcams, etc. So these are some examples of how the production had to adapt, so with new ideas, but also in how it is produced. Basically, we have teams sending lighting equipment to some people at home in order to make sure that the host or the anchorman or anchorwoman are able to continue to host the shows. And at the same time, we're using the technology, the same technology as we're using here as a webinar, the Teams or whatever other platform, in order to have this interactivity with people. Maybe another example coming from the US, with Fremantle, we are producing American Idol, for instance, and it's really interesting how this has been done, because we had 4 shows to produce still in live, and basically we have sent, or the production has sent, all the lighting equipment to the host, Ryan Seacrest, in order to be able to do the show from his own home. And it's really funny because a few months ago he has received this American Idol desk that he was storing in the garage, and basically he took it out again, and in order to produce the show. So again, in those times you need to be quick, but you need to be extremely flexible in order to adapt to the situation. And I join what Neil has said. It's a balance between things that are very close to the situation at the moment, so the lockdown, but also things that are very important, like entertainment and information.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that some of the big tentpole commercial broadcaster shows are actually perhaps more adaptable to lockdown situations than some of the drama that perhaps Netflix is more known for. I want to move on to advertising and streaming though, and bring James in here. We're on the verge of I would say a second wave of disruption in streaming, and that is advertising supported streaming becoming increasingly important in the market, and that's going to lead to ever greater audience fragmentation. James, what would you say is happening out there in the streaming landscape, and what are the implications for the wider industry?
Hi guys. So yeah, you point quite rightly to a world where we are going through and experiencing increasing fragmentation, increasing distribution of content across different platforms, channels, etc. I think as technology advances, as consumer navigation becomes more second nature across these platforms and devices, I kind of see that continuing to grow. So I think there'll be more audience fragmentation, but with that, there'll come a point where there's going to be more consolidation around this fragmentation and pulling these audiences together. And I think that's potentially where, and tying this into the theme of this chat and this segment today, is where content becomes king. And I think from an advertiser perspective, looking at this distribution and appraising it from a content first perspective, and partnering with and looking to broadcasters, publishers, media owners, whatever you might call them, that have multiple distribution for their content, and represent that no matter where that content is consumed, is going to give advertisers and brands the best opportunity to ensure they harness the best content and environments for their advertising, which creates the most engaged consumers, the best place for them for their brands to be appearing, and also the ability to be able to scale the biggest audiences across all these fragmented distribution points. So for me, that's where this, the notion that content remains king and the ability to work directly with people who own those relationships are going to become increasingly important.
So just let me pick up on that. What do you mean by content becomes king in that environment, and how does it work from a practical perspective? Are you talking about aggregating sales across multiple platforms, but also multiple content sources, or are you talking about some other mechanism?
I think in answer to your question, I'm talking about aggregating distributed supply. So if I take Vivo as an example of that, our content is distributed via living rooms across a whole host of different connected TV endpoints. We represent the rights of sale, the access to that content, regardless of what distribution point that is on, whether it is Roku, whether it is on YouTube, whether it is on Sky Q, for example. And so working with a business such as ourselves that enables you to tap into what is really powerful and premium content, regardless of where it's distributed, enables a brand to scale access to the best content.
Yeah, Stefan, you've got some views on that, I think.
Yeah, what is really interesting to see at the moment is there is an overflow, or we are flooded by content and by offers, both coming from international. You saw, of course, along the Netflix and the Amazon Video, we saw the appearance of Apple TV Plus, Disney Plus has launched. Now we have Peacock. HBO Max is on the starting blocks in May. So very, very noisy market at the moment, especially from international. But at the same time, the local or national operators like broadcasters as well are developing their own, local offer. So yes, my feeling is there will be, at the beginning at least, a lot of fragmentation, more fragmentation than ever before, simply because there's so much choice. And people, especially at this moment, they have time to test and choose and look, but at some point of time there will be a limit in time for sure, but also in limit. This is what I call the share of wallets. You know, all those offers are mostly paid offer. And I think at some point of time, you know, we will go back to reality and what is the acceptable number of subscription that you can get. You know, I think in the US, the average subscribers watches 3.4 services in average. I don't think there will be place or enough place to have 7 or 6 or 8 different paid subscription capabilities. So there will be definitely some people who will lose and some platform that will disappear at some point of time. So and again, it will not be only paid; it will be AVOD as well. This is very important. I think most of the people want to access to free content, even if they have to watch some ads. And there might be also as well some hybrid model like Peacock will be launching, or Hulu. And we are going to experiment as well within the RTR group.
So, Neil, you want to come in on that?
Yeah, well, I mean, the guys have explained it. There is going to be a huge set of competition coming in. Lots more SVOD, lots more D2C services attempting to really, again, gain that share of the television viewing market. You know, if you look at what's quite interesting, if you look at most countries, the amount of television that each country on average watches kind of really remains the same. UK is usually around between 4. It's about 5 hours at the moment for obvious reasons, but usually around 4. The States usually around 5, and you can go on so on and so forth. It's just the share of that television viewing that's obviously important. I don't think more and more programming is going to suddenly take the UK from a 4 hours a day on average TV viewing population to an 8 hours a day TV viewing population. There just isn't that amount of time. It's only huge disruption like we've had right at this moment that does significantly change it, and that will go back to the pre-normal state. So I think what would be really interesting going forward is how the new entrants into the market, how the share between those new entrants actually works out, and who develops a real connection with the audience. Because there is one school of thought that has said lots of the new entrants, lots of the new content, lots of the new SVOD players will all be sort of attempting to deliver and to gain share in a certain section of our market with a certain section of and format. They're not, as actually interesting as Stefan was talking before, they're not talking about news, information, public service. They're talking about escapism and drama and faction entertainment. And, believe it or not, we all need a balanced TV diet. So it'll be really interesting to see how much of that sub-market, in a way, they can get hold of.
Yeah. We were chatting before this session, and I posed a question around disruption of, I guess, the ad load, particularly in the US market, and particularly around plans that Peacock has to reduce ad load to 5 minutes per hour. I think Stefan was the one who volunteered to give the answer on this, but one of the things that I've been asking myself is how does that affect the US network ad market, and particularly around things like CPMs, if you are limiting ad load to such a low amount compared to what people are used to in that market.
So maybe to give you a little bit of an insights, first of all, the US market is very much different from the European market when it comes to ad load, especially also from a legal perspective. In Europe, we're maxing out at 12 minutes an hour, whereas in the US, it's very uncommon not to have at least 20 to 25 minutes an hour while watching TV. So honestly, the quality in the viewing experience is a lot different. You know, I'm sure all of you or most of you have been in the US. You know, I'm telling you, it's tough to watch a series or 45-minute series because it's constantly cut by ads, for sure. So it's good for the business, but from a consumer experience, I think it's not the best quality. So NBC in particular, you were mentioning NBC and Peacock, and Linda Yaccarino has been extremely vocal about this over the last few months. I think that's one of her assets that she's pushing in the US by trying to go for more qualitative experience within the TV, either linear or non-linear. I think there are some, she has put in place some initiatives also in the linear TV on NBC with a few blocks that are a lot less longer. That creates more quality in terms of viewing time from a consumer point of view, but also less clutter from an advertiser perspective. So of course, at the end of the day, will the block will be cheaper at the end of the, or will the block deliver less money to NBC? I don't think so. So yes, there will be an increase of CPM or keep the CPM up to a certain level, but I think that's what you want to do. You want to have viewers that are looking at your ads, that are engaged with your ads, that are looking at the brand equity that you want to convey through the ad that you are airing. So it's really important, I think, this qualitative. And I think in Europe, we have a lot better viewing experience than in the US. And then if we go now to the non-linear, so the Peacock is one example. Again, I think there will be different models in the VOD ecosystem. There will be no ads. So that's the Netflix or the Amazon of this world. You pay for it and you pay more. So you get the luxury not to have ads, but not everyone can afford that. So there will be also ad-funded programs like ITV Hub is one of them, or TV Now in Germany, where yes, you have more ads, but at least you can get access to a free content, qualitative content, and multi-target type of content. And there will be some hybrid model coming up with less ad load, less ads, but you will have to pay a minimum fee. And that's what I think Peacock is trying to do. So at the end of the day, it's about quality in the viewing experience. And I think that's the innovation that we will see in the future with OTT and addressable TV will make this even more compelling, because I think it might not be less ad or less ad load in Europe, but better ad experience, because you will get the ads that you want that are meaningful for you in the future, thanks to addressable TV or OTT services.
Yeah. Let me bring James in here and talk about what sort of tools are out there in terms of reassuring advertisers perhaps that they are reaching audiences across multiple screens and devices, and what tools and processes are out there that can help with that.
Yeah, so thank you. So the ongoing and conundrum around multi-channel measurement, you know, I think will continue to exist, although is evolving and developing in the right direction. But short-term time frame to execute that in a perfect entity remains like something that is a challenge for all of us. You know, whether that is the technical difficulty of actually being able to join everything up, or, you know, being honest, like some conflicting interests around, you know, different platforms, etc., and how that's all pulled together. But that said, I think there's definitely progress being made in this area. As a business, we have a big appetite to be able to measure absolutely everything we can. We know the appetite for the consumption of our content. We want to do the utmost we can to be able to represent that independently and verify that. And we've worked with a lot in recent years with Nielsen, both on sort of DAR and TAR measurement of our audiences to prove both the totality of what our audience looks like, but also the incrementality of what that audience looks like. We'd love to be able to open that up into the, the explosion of consumption we're seeing across, living room and the TV set for Vivo content. So we're evolving, the work and progress we do with Nielsen, but also recently there was a business called T-Vision, which we started working with this year in the States, and operates similarly to a kind of, I guess, Barb in the UK, in the sense that it's a circa 5,000 people panel, but they have a combination of a camera within the living room that's actually watching what people are doing in the room, combined with some content recognition software. So it pairs the content that people are watching, understands things like how engaged they are with that content, things like co-viewing, etc. So some really promising development around that we've seen in the States. We're hoping that technology, that business, can be translated into our other markets, because it's proving some really robust and interesting insights into a more holistic view on consumption in the living room.
Mm. I understand that similar technology is being used to measure Netflix by Nielsen, but Neil, you're on the board of Barb, so I'm sure you have some input on that missing bit of measurement and how we turn it into a tradable currency.
Well, yeah, I mean, I can definitely say I suppose to echo what James has said, it is incredibly complex, but we are getting there. It's taken a long time for us to be able to sort of weave all of this stuff together. If I try to bring it into a practical perspective, I think at the moment ITV is available on around 30 platforms. And you can imagine trying to understand, just from a perspective of measuring one program on 30 platforms, and trying to understand which people watch on which in what time over a whole month or a whole year, and feeding that back into a single source system, which allows you then to understand, as you say, incremental reach and time spent, all of those incredibly important metrics that we have actually sort of taken for granted over the years. It is a really difficult thing to do, but I think we're making really, big steps now. We have Barb is releasing its dovetail planning system, which allows you to plan airtime and plan your campaign over multiple platforms across broadcasters. I know the commercial broadcasters we are all developing our proposition for to understand with agencies and advertisers called C-Flight, which allows us to again show incremental reach and impacts and impressions across all platforms for our advertisers' campaigns. So we've got a kind of planning and a reconciliation tool nearly in the market right now, very, very nearly. We're very close to it, so that's fantastic. But yeah, I mean, Netflix is the next one for us. We're actually in development now on the Barb panel. We're getting data coming back through. It's in early stages with new meters via Kantar. Nielsen have also got a solution. So we're very, very close to being able to really get it to grips with all of the previously unmatched material that has always been actually measured but not reported to that accuracy that we're used to. But we're very close to that now, and it's incredibly interesting when you see the results coming through. So pretty soon, I think, obviously the current situation has slowed us down a bit, but pretty soon we're gonna have a full picture of total television and advertising across all platforms, including SVOD players.
Okay, we're down right to the last minute, so just let me ask James one last question, and it's really around once we're able to measure that audience across and find that audience across multiple devices, does it actually matter where that audience is coming from in terms of monetization and advertising?
Try and wrap this up quickly. I think the core considerations in terms of advertiser perspective on where they're landing comes back to what's the quality of the content I'm going to reside in, the environment in which it's going to be consumed in, and thirdly, the size and the profile of the audience I'm reaching. So the answer to your question, I guess, is yes, if it's relevant to one of those three considerations. Just, and I guess to exemplify that, if something is streamed or broadcast in a linear perspective on a TV screen, I don't necessarily see too much difference from an advertising perspective and performance around that. But possibly there is some difference in terms of consumption via a mobile device versus what it would look like on a TV set for, for the obvious high impact reasons, the environment in which you're consuming it, the likelihood of co-viewing, etc. So there is some distinction there, but broadly, at its core, what's the quality of the content, and what's the environment, and what's the size and profile of the audience as guidance on that question. Okay.
Well, as always with these things, it seems we're just getting started and we've run out of time. And hardly got through half of the questions we intended, but I'm sure the audience will be listening and have questions of their own. Nonetheless, I have to say, wrap it up there, and thank you very much to my panelists, Neil, James, and Stefan. Thank you.
Thank you.